Hey everybody, Todd here with Industrial Comfort. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to replace a vacuum assist brake booster for your vehicle. Now in this particular instance, I'm doing this on a 1976 International Scout 2. Now there are a couple of things that you're going to need for this project. Primarily a tool like this that you can get on Amazon that's going to allow you to gauge the depth of your push rod here so that you don't have to fiddle with pulling the master cylinder on and off to get the proper adjustment. Now, before we get started, a few recommendations. In a previous video, and I'll put a link in the description, I replaced my master cylinder. It is highly recommended that you do both the master cylinder and the brake booster at the same time if you suspect that there's an issue with your brake booster. While the brake booster in my case is working okay, I know that some of the brake fluid has been siphoned off inside this and burned off in the engine. So I know that at some point this is going to need to be replaced. So I'm doing this a bit proactively. Now the good news for this project is that it's really simple. You really only need to disconnect about 8 bolts, and you will need to bench bleed your master cylinder if you're replacing it. And like I said, there's a video that I'll put a link in the description for that will show you how to do that. So I think we're ready to get started. So as I mentioned, we're going to disconnect the master cylinder. That's 4 bolts, one for the front brakes, one for the rear brakes, and then 2 to disconnect from the vacuum assist brake booster. There are 4 bolts that we'll use to disconnect this and a cotter pin with the connecting linkage to the pedal. And then we just have to take the hose off the vacuum brake booster. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do here is loosen the bolts on the master cylinder, and I'm going to remove the lines here, and I've got some small plugs here that came with the new master cylinder that I'm just going to use to plug the master cylinder so that we don't lose too much brake fluid. I'm actually going to loosen up the master cylinder a little bit so that we can be a little bit easier to get these lines off and plugged. Okay. All right, now that the master cylinder is off, I'm just going to disconnect the vacuum hose. Okay. Now I'm going to work off the bolts on the brake booster here. Okay, with the bolts off and everything sort of disconnected, I'm just going to slide the booster off the flange. And it's going to be held in place to the brake linkage by a pin. You can't really see it from that side, but I'm just going to take a pliers here and I am going to push the cotter pin out. Okay, so the cotter pin is out. Now I just need to slide the pin out, and there are some holes in the flange that you probably can't see from that angle. I'm just going to use the pliers to get the pin out, and this pin holds the linkage to the brake booster like this. As you can see, this thing is absolutely filthy, and the plunger actually fell out. So there's effectively very little in the way of a seal here. So what's really important is remember to keep this. Do not throw this out, because when you buy your replacement, there's what's called a core charge. And the core charge is essentially they take these things and they refurb them, and they want to make sure that you return your old one when you buy your new one. So don't throw this out. At this point, with the brake booster out of the vehicle, I'm essentially just going to reverse the process with this new one. Now, I pulled a bunch of lock washers off the back of the old one. Make sure you keep these because you can use them with the new unit that you have here, and for some reason they don't seem to come with lock washers. The other thing I'm going to do real quickly is just clean off the connector pin, lube it up a little bit, and then we'll be ready to reinstall the new brake booster, and I'll show you how to use this adjustment tool for the push rod. But I'm just going to feed the old pin back in, stick the cotter pin back through. Okay. With the cotter pin bent, we'll reposition this, and as I mentioned before, for some reason the flange is narrower than the bolts on this booster. So we're going to feed the bottom in first, and then we're just going to gently pry the bracket apart. Okay, put the lock washers on, and then we'll retighten up these bolts. With everything now buttoned up on this side for the vacuum assist booster, we need to get the master cylinder in place. And I mentioned before that we've got a tool that will allow us to measure the gap between the push rod here and the primary piston in the master cylinder. So this tool I got on Amazon, very cool little tool. And the way that it works is it's actually got a magnet on it, so that doesn't happen. Not sure why it didn't work. So let's try this again. So what you do is you orient based on the lines on the tool. So master cylinder this way, and you want to unscrew this knob and push this rod until it bottoms out on the cylinder, or the piston I should say. And then you want to tighten the knob down so it keeps the rod in place. Then what you want to do is put the tool on the brake booster, excuse me, and then what you want to do is adjust the push rod so that it is about 1/16 of an inch off this rod. That way you're not inappropriately applying any brake pressure without pressing the pedal, and you have the right level of engagement. So I need to back the pin out. Looks like about 1/16 of an inch. Now, this particular push rod uses a 9/32 inch wrench for the top here, and I would highly recommend using a vice grip to do this. You can certainly use a pliers, but this is going to make things a lot easier. So I'm just going to open this up, like I said, about 1/16 of an inch. And then we'll remeasure. Actually just gonna steal this light for a second. I'm gonna open it up a hair more. Okay, so we are where we need to be. I'm just gonna double check to make sure. All right, so everything is good. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and just reverse the process and put everything back together. I'm gonna remove the plugs on the master cylinder, and then we'll feed the lines in place. And that's all there is to it. It's not too difficult a project. I would just recommend that if you're going to do this and you need to replace the master cylinder or rebuild it, just do everything at the same time. It's a lot less of a hassle. Also remember, you're going to want to pick up that gap tool that I showed you how to use, and don't forget to return your core to get your money back. If you found this helpful, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.